Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets rang glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home, America, your home of the brave.
Thank you, Mayor. Now, folks, if you could please remain standing. This past year, the Hall of Fame has lost 6 of its members. George Benton, Millicard Brusa, Smoking Joe Frazier, Angelo Dundee, Bert Sugar, and Eddie Perkins. Please remain silent as the Ring 76 President, Frankie Adams, will give a 10 count in their honor. May they rest in peace. And now, this year, for the first time, we have a new mayor in our village of Canastota. In fact, it's the first lady mayor that we've ever had. We'd like to call on Mayor Carla DeShaw to give us a few words. Mayor?
What a weekend. I've given a lot of thought to what I wanted to say today, and in thinking about the boxers and what they've accomplished today, 2 words came to mind. One was perseverance, and the other was courage. I tell my students that to achieve the possible, you must attempt the impossible, because if you don't attempt, you will never know. And thinking about that, I said, those are the 2 words that come to mind, courage and perseverance. They uncover the strength in an individual, and it also reveals the grace and the beauty. The time strips away the frivolous life layers on experience, and you have become magnificent. And today we recognize you for becoming magnificent in your chosen career. And with that, I congratulate the inductees this year and all previous inductees. I'm so humbled and proud to be the mayor of Canastota, you can't imagine. I grew up here, and this event means so much, not only to Canastota, but to Central New York. And I thank the fans, the volunteers, the businesses, the boxers, Ed Brophy, the village trustees, and there's too many to mention. But thank you very much for coming, and I look forward to the induction.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we're going to start our induction process, and we'll start with our deceased inductees. And the chairman of our induction process is Herb Goldman, and he will honor the deceased.
Thank you, Don. The International Boxing Hall of Fame 2012 deceased inductees. First in the moderns. Born in Puerto Rico, he was world rated as a lightweight, welterweight, middle from 1933 to 1947, winning New England titles in 2 classes. He defeated Hall of Famer Holman Williams 8 times, and also beat such men as Jack Chase, Eddie Booker, Slugger White, Steve Mamacos, Chalky Wright, and Lewis Kid Kaplan. Herbert Lewis Hardwick, also known as Coco Kid. Leo Thomas, a leading flyweight of the 1920s, he defeated Hall of Famer Frankie Gennaro twice en route to winning the California version of the world title by outpointing Johnny McCoy. He also beat Corporal Izzy Schwartz, Midget Vargas, Panama Al Brown, Baby Arizmendi, and Chalky Wright, among many others. Newsboy Brown. The pride of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, he turned pro in 1904 and achieved contender status in the welter, middle, and light heavyweight divisions. He defeated Hall of Famer Harry Lewis over 20 rounds in Paris, and also beat such men as Batley Levinsky, Jimmy Gardner, and Frank Mantell. The boxing coach at Penn State College for 27 years. He guided 48 boxers to collegiate titles, including future world middleweight champion Billy Seuss, Leo Houck. This man fought under both London prize ring and Queensbury rules. He had the better of a 106-round bare-knuckle draw versus English heavyweight champion Jim Smith in 1887 and went 75 prize ring rounds against John O'Sullivan on July 8, 1889. He also knocked out George Godfrey in the 44th round under Queensbury rules in 1891. Jake Kilrain. In the Pioneers, born in Morocco, he entered the prize ring in England and defeated Tom McKeever, Bill Fisher, Harry Preston, William Renwick, and Hammer Lane, among others. Recognized as world middleweight champion from 1837 to his retirement in 1841, he was the greatest pound-for-pound fighter in the history of the bare-knuckle prize ring. The undefeated young Molyneux, James Warden. And in the non-participants, he promoted world heavyweight champion Tommy Burns' title defenses versus Bill Squires, Bill Lang, and Jack Johnson in 1908, thus establishing what became Stadiums Limited, the basis of big-time boxing in Australia for almost 60 years. He sold his venues to Snowy Baker in 1912 and headed a consortium to buy Tivoli Theatres Limited, Australia's leading vaudeville chain. Australia's greatest showman, huge deal, Hugh Dean McIntosh. Austin's leading promoter for some 50 years. He managed world junior welterweight champion Sammy Fuller, began promoting in 1932 and took over boxing at the Boston Garden 3 years later. Partnered with Sam Silverman for more than 30 years, he guided the careers of such outstanding fighters as Tony DeMarco, Tommy Collins, Joe DiNucci, and Marvin Hagler. New England boxing's greatest mover and shaker, Anthony Rip Valenti. The International Boxing Hall of Fame 2012 deceased inductees, Don Ackerman, take it away.
Thank you, Herb. Before we go on with our induction process, I'd like to first call on for just a few words our brave Grand Marshal, Desmond Howard.
Surprise, I came up here quick, huh? Good afternoon, good afternoon. Thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this special occasion. As I was sitting back there in the seat, I was thinking what I want to address this audience with. And you know, I have one thing, well, I have several things in common with the men who you see before you. But I need you to know you're looking at a very special group of men. One thing we have in common is I've been inducted into a Hall of Fame or two also. And it's a special moment because the culmination of your life's work. Now you still got some guys up here who are still working. But to be acknowledged by your peers for what you've done so far. I mean, the greatness, whether you're a ring announcer, a writer, a commentator, or an actual boxer, they've contributed greatly to the sport that we love called boxing. And they're being acknowledged for that today and this weekend. God well done, man. God well done. I had one moment this weekend that really stood out to me. Had some funny moments because we have some very colorful characters up here. And over there too. But one moment that stuck out was I was sitting next to Mr. Bernstein and I was having a conversation with his family. And I spoke with his son. I said, isn't this a great weekend? Isn't this fun? And his son looked me in the eye and said, you know what? This is a great time, but I'm so proud of my dad. That sums it all up right there. And to me, that's what moments like this is about. Of course, it's about the athletes, the ring announcers, the writers, the commentators. But it's about sharing it with your family and friends. So gentlemen, enjoy this. This is a great honor. You guys are more than well deserving of this. But it's even better when you can share it with the fans who make these things possible, who make these people who they are, and the family members who love, care, and respect you. So thanks for coming out. I'm very honored to be the Grand Marshal. Thank you very much for letting me be a part of it. Enjoy the rest of the ceremony because I want to hear from these men just like you do. Thank you very much and God bless.
We have some family members and some of our deceased, and I'd like to call on them to say a few words, and they will get a certificate to bring back with them. And it will say International Boxing Hall of Fame. There have been tens of thousands of people involved in the sport of professional boxing. Only a very few are memorialized for their achievements in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Inductees of the International Boxing Hall of Fame in Canastota, New York are determined by the criteria of the Hall of Fame and the vote of the Boxing Writers Association of America and other boxing writers and historians from throughout the world. Congratulations on the high regard in which you are held by this knowledgeable group. This honor symbolizes your accomplishments in the sport of boxing, a worldwide year-round sport that requires discipline, dedication, and talent for the success you have attained. And accepting in Rip Valenti's honor, we'd like to call on Al Valenti, grandson. Al?
Thank you, Don. I'd like to first thank Ed Brophy and Don Ackerman for this terrific honor bestowed upon my grandfather. I noticed that the Herb called him a mover and shaker. I knew him as Donnie Rip. And truthfully, he was a remarkable individual. Consider 1928 in Boston. There was no Boston Garden. They built it, Tex Record did, specifically for boxing. Along with the Bruins, and there were no Celtics then, my grandfather saw it fit to run professional boxing in a city that soon became the home to boxing on the East Coast, like New York City and Philadelphia. Names like Tony DeMarco, Carmen Basilio, Joe Louis, Al McCoy, the only heavyweight fight ever fought in the Garden in that great city of Boston. Rip Valenti promoted that fight. I can talk about all the names, the litany of fine professional boxers that competed in Boston over the years, but more importantly, my grandfather was passionate about boxing. He was passionate about the boxers themselves, so much that he branched out from Boston and found cities like Lewiston, Maine, Portland, Maine, Fall River, New Bedford, North Adams, Providence, Manchester, New Hampshire, Hartford, Connecticut, cities and towns, nooks and crannies, hamlets, to put on professional boxing shows. And I know why now, because he was a fan. More than anything, he was like all of us here today. When I look at this entourage up here, and I think about boxers, and I think about the boxers up here that my grandfather touched. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Freddie Roach. Freddie Roach, my grandfather promoted his first fight, I promoted his last fight. That's quite an amazing feat. I look at Al Bernstein calling our ESPN shows at the Roxy in Boston. Michael Buffer, back in the days of Marvin, starting his great career. Carlos Ortiz at the Christmas show at Boston Garden. Of course, the Tommy Hearns Marvin fight, the Ray Leonard Marvin fight, all promoted in New England by Rip Valenti. To the inductees, I say, live with this. As my fine football friend said, it's about this group. No finer group of men will you find than professional boxers. Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to call out the son and grandson of Leo Houck. It would be Ed and Ed Jr. Houck.
Thank you all for being here. It's a lovely day and a great day for boxing. I just want to talk a little bit about my father, Leo Houck, after his professional career. You're all familiar with that from what you see in the program and so on. He was a top middleweight and designated as the uncrowned middleweight champion before a lot of the people. But he had another career in boxing. After he left the commercial, the professional game, he was appointed coach at Penn State, and there he learned that he could teach as well as practice the art of boxing. And through the years, he had hundreds of young students go through his training and become proficient with the art. Not necessarily as pros. The college boxing was not a source of professionals like national football. But he did produce two outstanding boxers. One, Billy Seuss, who was mentioned, became the middleweight champion. And the other was a heavyweight by the name of Steve Hagnes. Steve Hagnes was probably the greatest athlete that ever graduated from Penn State. He won 15 letters in 5 different sports over 3 years. He became a heavyweight contender, but he never got a shot at the big prize. And for Leo, during his years at Penn State, he also was a licensed referee for the state of Pennsylvania, and refereed bouts in Pittsburgh and the Scranton Wilkes-Barre area, Harrisburg and our hometown of Lancaster, and also in Philadelphia, where he officiated a couple of championship fights that involved light heavyweight Tommy Loughran and middleweight champion Bob Montgomery, both natives of Philadelphia and very popular down there. Then during World War II, Leo was part of a sports group that toured the small bases around the North Atlantic and South Atlantic. He such people as Red Blake of football. Red Rolfe, the famous Yankee third baseman during the great Yankee years in the 20s and 30s. Charlie Berry, one of the Dean of American League umpires. They toured the small bases in places like Greenland and Iceland and northern Canada, and then they went down to the Caribbean with the small bases there, Trinidad, and then over to the Azores. This group is put on programs of teaching and listening and conversing with the GIs at these various bases. And they were gone for about 3 or 4 months during the summer and fall of 1944. I might add one other landmark of Leo's. During the summer of 1927, he spent most of his time at the Atlantic City training camp with Gene Tunney, helping him prepare for his second fight with Gene Tunney. Jack Dempsey was at the Atlantic City. He helped Dempsey at the prepare for his second Tunney fight in Philadelphia. Of course, Dempsey lost that one too, but he became good friends with Jack Dempsey, and over the years they used to see each other and heard his functions. Toward the end of, right after the war, when Jack Dempsey, who had been in the Coast Guard as a head of one of the physical training bases out in California, was in the Coast Guard, came up to New London in the Coast Guard Academy to referee the boxing match between Penn State and the Coast Guard. I happened to be there with my wife at the time, so we spent a very pleasant after fights with Jack and some of the people at the Coast Guard. And lastly, I want to mention that during Leo's career at Penn State, he was a frequent visitor to prisons around the state at the invitation of the wardens and the penal officials to teach some of the inmates who were interested in boxing and to referee some of their boxing bouts. And he got a lot of satisfaction out of this. But that's just a summary of what Leo did after his active professional career, and I think that adds to his value as a member of the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I want to mention one other thing. I remember Leo best as a good and kind father and a loving husband of my mother, and I think I reflect the same sentiment of my 3 brothers and sisters. And I thank you very much for coming today. It was a great day.
Next, we're going to call on Hall of Famer Carlos Ortiz. He's going to accept this certificate for Coco Kid.
Thank you. What a surprise. I come to the Hall of Fame here for 20 years, and this is a great honor, you know. They told me that I was supposed to get a plaque for the Coco Kid. I never heard of the Coco Kid. This is the first time that I do this pleasure. And I'm very, 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 very proud to accept this.
Now we're going to move on to our living inductees. And they're going to get that certificate, much like the one that I talked about before, but they're also going to get their Hall of Fame ring. Starting off, he was born in the Bronx, New York. He enrolled in the City College after high school and began writing for the school newspaper, the campus, eventually becoming sports editor and served as a stringer for the New York Times covering CCNY sports. He worked as a copy boy at the Times in 1961 and soon worked his way up the ladder to news assistant and ultimately to the sports desk. In 1966, he moved to Europe and was sports editor of the Times International edition. While there, he covered his first heavyweight championship, Floyd Patterson and Jimmy Ellis. Returning to the United States in 1972, he resumed the duties at the Times sports desk. In 1985, he moved to the New York Daily News. In 2000, he joined the HouseOfBoxing.com and subsequently wrote for Max Boxing, Showtime, and MSG Network. 2012 Hall of Fame inductee in the journalist category, Michael Katz.
You know, after last night, I wasn't sure I wanted to be in the Hall of Fame of the sport. I mean, that may have been the worst decision since Great Scott. This morning at breakfast, I saw my old buddy Marvin Hagler. I asked him, I said, Marv, have you ever seen a bad decision like that? Going to somehow overcome 3 judges in Las Vegas again. Probably it'll happen again and again and again. But that doesn't change anything about the very nature of boxing, which is 2 men competing at their utmost for supremacy in a squared circle. It's a beautiful, beautiful game, although I know I should play it. And I watched last night at the, whatever we were at, I watched my old buddy Jerry Cooney working the crowd, and I realized there's something more than just wins and losses, you know, to get here to the Hall of Fame. Jerry Cooney, because of the politics involved, never became heavyweight champion. He certainly is a hell of a lot better than most of the men who did. But I watched him and I realized the way he bonded with the fans, you people, the way I heard cheers last night for a clip from Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward. My God. Let's open the Hall of Fame a little wider. I know we have people in here, present company accepted, who probably don't belong. Okay, let's get ready to be humble. I know that I shouldn't be here before some other writers, you know, who preceded me and who I think were just absolutely the real heirs to the great A.J. Liebling. People like Vic Siegel, who without whom I wouldn't have been around, a typewriter. Pat Putnam, who was just absolutely brilliant. My buddy Royce Fior, who came with me all the way from Las Vegas to beat the heat. And about family, I couldn't have made it without my late wife and the beautiful daughter she left me, who unfortunately I must have done something wrong. She's now a lawyer. Maria, I love you anyway. And I just want to congratulate all my fellow classmates, even poor Freddie. Freddie, you ceremony? I want to tell you one little story about, I think the hero of this affair. I covered his fight in Detroit in 1980 in August. He was fighting Pepino Cuevas. And 82?
August 2nd.
No, KO2, I know that.
August 2nd. August 2nd.
August 2nd. Okay. I'm being very specific about it. Certainly not going to argue with him. But I was out there for quite a while preparing a major cover story for the New York Times. And my photographer, we actually had a photographer assigned to doing Tommy Hearns' profile before he fought Cuevas. And he said, let's go out to see where Tommy grew up. So I went over to Tommy and I said, Tommy, where is the house? What's the address of where you grew up? He said, no, man. He said, I'll take you. I said, Tommy, you're fighting for a title tomorrow. He said, no, I have to go to the neighborhood all the time. And I haven't been there in a couple of weeks, We go out, and he drives the golden yellow Cadillac into the neighborhood. And you can just see doors opening and people running out. They come up on the wooden porch of Tommy's old, home. You're going to kill him, Tommy, you're going to kill him. And Tommy said, I'll try my best. He almost killed him. This is the beauty of guys in this sport. So understated by Thomas Hearns. Not like Ray Leonard. Marvin Hagler, who, it's just great seeing him again. But like Marvin, and especially after last night, I'm gonna stay retired. God bless you, Ray. Royce, thanks so much.
He began his professional career as a journalist, working as managing editor at Lieber newspapers in Chicago from 1974 to 1979. In 1978, he started articles for Boxing Illustrated and published his first book, Boxing for Beginners. In 1980, he joined a fledgling all-sports network called ESPN, and until 1998 was analyst on the popular Top Rank boxing series. He has called over 60 pay-per-view telecasts involving ring legends like Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, George Foreman, and Oscar De La Hoya. Since 2003, he has been analyst for Showtime Championship Boxing, armed with a passion for the sport, a vast knowledge of boxing history, and a smooth voice and demeanor has endeared him with boxing fans the world over. 2012 Hall of Fame inductee from the Observer category, Al Bernstein.
Thank Thank you so much. I have something in common with Carlos. I don't know Al Bernstein. Thank you so much. This Hall of Fame is essentially for the great boxers who you see on this stage and others that are not here. It's built for them. It is their house. However, this Hall of Fame is very generous in the way it welcomes those of us who fulfill another function for boxing. And I take this as a supreme honor that I'm allowed to be a part of this place that is so special. It's a singular honor, and it's made even more special to me by the other inductees who are on this stage. I have a shared history with every one of them, and I cherish that. And with the exception, perhaps, of Mark, who is a little younger, most of us came into the public consciousness in the 1980s. So it's kind of, we represent that decade, if you will, and that was one of the great decades ever in the sport of boxing. And if you remember that decade, it was also a decade in which everybody had more fun than any other decade. So it's possible that we're being honored because we survived the 80s. I'm not sure. Would you say that's a fair statement, gentlemen? Right. Anyway, we're here and we're very happy to be part of this. There are, of course, as we've mentioned, 3 of the 4 kings from the 1980s are here. Obviously, Tommy Hearns, who was being inducted, Sugar Ray Leonard, just behind me, and Marvelous Marvin Hagler as well. I was so fortunate to get to announce a number of the fights involving these great men. It was an era in boxing that may never come again. It was so extraordinary. And in 1985, I had the privilege of announcing the fight between Tommy Hearns and Marvelous Marvin Hagler. And I remember in that outdoor stadium at Caesar's Palace, and if any of you have ever been there, it's one of the most extraordinary settings for a fight ever. And when Tommy was coming out, I remember sitting there and thinking, how fortunate am I that I have this seat to call this fight, which you got the feeling would be a fight for the ages, and it certainly was that. And I tell you, and this is absolutely true, since that time, every single time we're getting ready for a fight and the fighters are walking in, I consciously try and recall that moment in my mind so that I can remind myself how fortunate I am to be sitting there calling these fights. And it's a great exercise because it reminds me how lucky I am to be able to chronicle the sport of boxing for all these great fighters. But with that good fortune comes a responsibility. A responsibility that every sportscaster and every broadcaster should take seriously. There are certain things that should never ever happen, and I've made 3 rules for myself as a sportscaster to allow me to hopefully keep the respect of all these great athletes. Number 1, I never try and be bigger than the event I'm covering. Number 2 is don't ever disrespect an athlete, and certainly not a boxer that you're covering. And number 3 is being fair is always more important than being clever. Now, I'm confident that there have been a few times over the last 30-some years when maybe I didn't live up to all those rules. But I can tell you, I can assure you that those times were by accident. They weren't on purpose. My brief and not distinguished amateur career in boxing some 40 years ago taught me one thing, that it hurts to get hit in the head. And it taught me that boxing is not an easy sport to master. And so to be a professional boxer on any level, let alone how great these champions are, you have to be someone very, very special. Now, for a sportscaster to disrespect an athlete in any sport is, or to demean them is absolutely wrong. But to demean a boxer is criminal. And I hope that this honor today is some validation of what I've done in the past, but I will tell you that it energizes me in the future. It energizes me to try and do a better job, to do my job as well as I can, to chronicle the sport of boxing so that we reach out to new fans, as well as holding on to the base of boxing and make sure that this sport is explained to everyone in the right way. Now, this is not to suggest that I haven't had a few faux pas along the way in my career. I have. One of them came very early in the 1980s. In fact, I think we were in Rip's area, in Al Valenti's area in New England. We were at the end of an ESPN fight in the early 80s, and Sal Marciano was sitting next to me, and we were doing the close of the show. And normally when we got to the close of the show, once they started running video highlights, Sal just completed the end of the show, and I was never involved in it. They never came back on camera to see us. Well, on this occasion, Sal started to talk over the highlights of the fights, and I decided that I was just going to leave because I was not needed anymore. Well, at that very moment that I was getting up from the chair, for some reason they came back on camera, just in time to catch me leaving. To which Sal Marciano said, "We'll be in Atlantic City next week," and that's Al getting a head start. I have made other mistakes, but not that one again in the future. Sal was one of the first of many talented sportscasters I've had a chance to work with. Men like Barry Tompkins, Steve Albert, Bob Papa, Dave Von Temple, and many, many others. Two of the very best I've gotten to work with are in this audience and on this stage here today. The first is a gentleman who is up here on the stage. He is, of course, you know him as a great, great champion in the ring, but he is also a fantastic ringside analyst. And I've never seen anyone come into this profession and get so good so fast. He's my friend, he's my colleague. I speak of Antonio Tarver. He's really a joy to work with. Another gentleman who's here is Steve Farman, who you know from the Showbox. Yes. Steve is industrious, funny, insightful. Wait a second, Steve, I can't read this next adjective. Can't read your handwriting. Oh, no, you just wrote, it's brilliant, that's the one. No, you know what? He is all those things, and he happens to be something else. He's a dear and loyal friend, and I'll tell you something. When I want to listen to somebody broadcast boxing, he's the guy I want to listen to at all times. I want to thank all my Showtime colleagues. You know, in 2003, I moved to Showtime, and I ended up in broadcasting heaven. It's been the most productive and best time of my career, by far. And I thank every single one of my Showtime colleagues for coming. They have stepped up to the plate this weekend to chronicle the weekend and make it very, very special for me. So I'm very pleased about that. And I want to mention two of the people that are here by name, not just because they're my bosses. It's not the only reason. A gentleman who's the executive producer of Showbox and the vice president at Showtime. He's maybe the most honorable and decent man I've met, both in and out of television, Mr. Gordon Hall. And another man who is the executive producer of Showtime Boxing, and I can sum it up by saying one simple thing. He's the very best at his craft that I have ever seen in my life. He also happens to be a valued and trusted friend, and he has helped make Showtime Sports, in my opinion, superb. Mr. David Dinkins, Jr. I'm honored to have many family and friends here, and among them, the Daly family from Lake Charles, Louisiana, they're like a second family to me, and they've come to share this with me. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law, Joe and Kathy D'Onofrio, my niece, Melissa, and her husband, Sean, and my nephew, Scott. I think of them as second children to me. They're special to me and will always be. And my sister, Amy, who is not only been the greatest sister to me, but she also has helped my career in a massive way. She's the managing director of my company, Bernstein Live, and does a spectacular job. And the only thing that's annoyed me about this weekend is all the great boxers that have met her seem to like her better than me. A little annoying, but she is wonderful, so I appreciate so much that she's here. And he already got a shout out from Desmond Howard, which is pretty good. My son Wes, my 13-year-old son Wes, who is sitting down there, and my wife Connie, who mean the world to me. Now I know they're proud of me, but I can assure you I'm prouder of them. So I appreciate it. There are three people that are not here, that can't be here, but their auras and their spirits are in this room. One is my mother, who is a widow raising 2 children alone, showed me that you can smash the barriers of life and you can succeed if you do your best. And then the other is my father, the second is my father, who loved sports and especially loved boxing. Now, I used to, when I was about 9 or 10 years old, I used to sneak down the stairs in our house and sit just out of eye shot when my father was watching the Friday night fights. And I would listen to those fights. And I would hear the voice of the greatest boxing announcer then, the greatest boxing announcer now, and the greatest boxing announcer that there ever will be, the great Don Dunphy. I wanted to grow up to be Don Dunphy more than anything on this planet. And in 1986, and he is the third person whose spirit hovers over this, for me anyway, hovers over this induction ceremony. In 1986, I got to meet Don Dunphy when we interviewed him. I interviewed him on ESPN. He became a mentor and a friend to me. It was like a dream come true. And I learned from him, and I got to experience who he was as a person. And he was a remarkable man. And when he died, the New York Times had this obituary. It said, Don Dunphy was an objective voice in a subjective sport. I hope that at some point, people feel that way about what I've done. I am not Don Dunphy, I will never be Don Dunphy. But if I can live up to that credo that he set out, then I'll be happy with that. Thank you very much.
He was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He was discharged from the Army in 1967, and he found work as a car salesman and also as a model. Encouraged by his son, he became a ring announcer in October of 1982. He soon was working on ESPN. In 1983, in an attempt to energize the crowd during pre-fight introductions, he coined the phrase, "Let's get ready to rumble." The expression soon skyrocketed in popularity and has become synonymous with major boxing events the world over. His unmistakable voice has been center ring for major bouts involving boxing's greatest. 2012 Hall of Fame inductee in the non-partisan category, Michael Buffer.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen. I forgot where I was. For those of you who don't know who I am, aren't familiar with me, in this sport of boxing, I'm the only person in the history of that sport to have ever been in the ring with marvelous Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hitman Hearns, Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, and none of them were ever able to lay a hand on me. That's because after I introduced them, I get the hell out of the ring. And Al, I want to thank you for stealing half of my speech.
That's what I'm here for.
David, I haven't seen you for quite a while. I didn't know you got all that beautiful weight here. Still a handsome guy.
I use your hairdresser, Mike.
You know I cut my own hair. Everybody knows how cheap I am, especially Alan. You know, it's almost impossible to express how much I'm really thrilled to be here and to be honored. For me, this actually is not a dream come true because I never even had this dream. It just never seemed possible. It's beyond anything I've ever dreamed of. And what makes this day even more special is that I'm sharing it with such a special group of guys, including our posthumous inductees, Newsboy Brown, Coco Kidd, Leo Houck, Jay Kilrain, promoters, Rick Valeni, Al, it's great to see you, and Hugh McIntosh, and of course the great pioneer James Worden. Along with my friends and heroes, and I've got a few words to say about them: Al Bernstein, Freddie Roach, Michael Katz, Mark, Too Sharp Johnson, and the Motor City Cobra, the hitman Thomas Hearns. I love the double nicknames, it just gives me more to say. Now, Al and I go back to 1983, and Top Rank Boxing on ESPN. At that time, Al was already one of the best ever. Smart, prepared, knowledgeable, honest, and uncompromising. But my best Al Bernstein story and memory is, remember Kenny Bang Bang Bogner?
Yes. Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Kenny Bogner was a ranked lightweight. Always wanted to get that shot at at Ray Boom Boom Mancini. Henry's the composer, and he used to have some great fights in Atlantic City. And of course, after each fight, Al would get up in the ring and interview these guys. Bogner traveled with a crew of fans that were just unbelievable, from Trenton, New Jersey, is that right? And by the end of the main event, they were loud, they were crazy, and 99% drunk. They were really insane. So Kenny had a great fight. He's the type of guy that used to bleed a lot. He would bleed during the introductions even. You know about that, don't you, Freddie? And so I forget who he fought, I forget the circumstances about the fight, but they go to commercial break, he's the winner, they come back, and Al's going to interview. Now by then, a lot of these fights used to be in ballrooms and very intimate and everything. So Bogner's crew, his posse, his gang, there's like 50 fellow Trentonians gathered around the ring. They're screaming, they're yelling, they're making so much noise. You know, and Al is always cool. And Bogner has a hood on, because he's always chopped up and he has his hood on like this. And Al's describing the circumstances of the fight, and he's saying, like, he goes through the setup and he just sets everything up, you know, real nice to get a response from Kenny Bogner. And he says, and something like that, and at what point did you think you had the fight under control? And the whole time Al was speaking, Bogner is going like this. And then Bogner lifts his head up after Al asked him a question. He says, I didn't hear a fucking word you said. Al doesn't miss a beat. He looks at the camera and he said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the world of live television. Freddie, of course, known the world over as the elite trainer, not the trainer du jour, but the trainer. Year after year, trainer of the year, now just the best trainer in boxing. But he was one hell of a fighter. In his career, he won 40 fights. Now think about some of the stars that are out there today. How many of them have won 40 fights? And Freddie was a heck of a fighter. but he also was prone to cuts, shall we say. And his fights were exciting because it was a bloodbath. Yeah, you were there. He used to pack the showboat like nobody else. He had more appearances on ESPN than anyone else except, I think, Terrence Ali finally broke your record. And unbelievable fights. And the best thing about a Freddie Roach fight was to see the expression on his opponent when he would go back to the corner covered in blood. And he's asking his corner, like, fix me up, man, I'm cut. And he said, that's not you, that's Freddie's blood. Freddie is just glad to be here and part of the class of 2012. Michael Katz, I guess, thank God I didn't have to follow Michael Katz. How do you follow an act like that? And one of the things about Michael, obviously, as you heard him speak, a master of wit, sarcasm to make a point and brutally make a point, and it's usually necessary, and it's an honest point. Now, I got straightened out on the story here earlier today, but I want to tell you about it because this is the type of sense of humor that Michael Katz has, and he never lets anything go. He's got a great memory. The great Pat Putnam, we were at a fight in Reno. I don't remember who it was on HBO. And when I do celebrity introductions, when you're at home, you don't see the celebrity introductions because usually I have to do it when it's a videotape because HBO talent they don't wear headphones, so you can't interfere with any background noise. So they tell me, if you got a minute 30 to do celebrity introductions, bing, 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 I introduce them. Now, Reno was a city where Joe DiMaggio used to like to come and go to the fights, and the owners of the hotels would fly him in for the great Yankee Clipper. And this was in 1991, the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the 56 game hitting streak. And the legendary Pat Putnam was at ringside. And as a joke, because he remembered once that DiMaggio was there, and Joe would always hide, he never would make himself known. And he didn't get introduced at a fight previously. So Pat Putnam says, "Oh, Freddie, you forgot to introduce Joe DiMaggio." So I thought, oh, I can't let this happen twice where he doesn't get introduced. I turn right around, I've got about 30 seconds left, and I say, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 50th anniversary of one of the greatest moments in sports," and I describe it. And I end up saying, you know, the Yankee Clipper Joe DiMaggio, standing ovation. The place goes crazy. And meanwhile, Putnam is, oh my God, he's not here. It was a joke. The promoter, Ben Duke, is running around. I gotta get his autograph. For the next 20 years, every time I see Katz, "Hey, Buffer, how about DiMaggio?" Never lets him go. Never lets him go. First, I'm Michael. How about DiMaggio? Never lets him go. Mark took Sharp Johnson. I was privileged to introduce him a few times, not enough. He is a fighter who, and it's like when he was in the ring, it was like Rembrandt and Michelangelo. An artist, just painting a masterpiece, a brilliant fighter, and you know, his weight class, flyweight, super flyweight, was almost all exclusively Asian fighters, Latino fighters, you know, small fighters. Mark was the first African American to capture a world title as a flyweight. 28 KOs. And one thing about that division where it's the little guys, they're all good. I remember when Michael Carbajal came out of the 88 Olympics and he was fighting 4-rounders against guys that were like 2 and 7. These guys were fantastic because they're all little. They were all the guys that were picked on by their brothers and sisters and classmates and they're tough as nails. And it was just a privilege. The few times I got to introduce you and see you work, Mark. Absolutely fantastic. And, you know, there are some fighters, there are some athletes that when they walk into a room, everybody stops. And Thomas Hearns is one of those guys. He's got that thing like, you say Tommy. And when in boxing, when you say Tommy, it's like if you said Muhammad. Of course you know who that is. But you just say Tommy, there's only one guy. It's Thomas Hitman Hearns. And he could knock you out cold with either hand. One punch, either hand. James Black Bull Shore, Michael Katz almost killed that one punch that ended the fight. Unbelievable. And you know, Akbar Muhammad, a buddy of Al and I from the ESPN days when he worked with Top Rank Boxing, he once told me that Tommy feared nobody, ever, nobody. And if you told him when he was a middleweight that he was going to have to fight the heavyweight champion of the world, give up 60, 70 pounds, he would just ask two questions. How much am I getting paid? And when does training camp start? No fear. Tommy, for me, to be here, and period, it's an honor, but to be on the same stage the day that you get inducted, I love it. It's just, that's what it is. Enough about these guys. Well, it all began in October of 1992. A young lady by the name of Toby Berlin. She was executive director of Playboy Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. And I didn't know who hired the ring announcers, so I thought I would contact all the hotels and their entertainment directors and everything. So she got this letter from this guy that said, I want to be a ring announcer, and it was a pitch and everything. But she thought, yeah, why not? She gave the letter to and asked Phil Alessi and his right-hand guy at the time, Mr. Brad Jacobs, to take a look at me, and if they think I can do it, give me a chance. And they did. It was Tuesday night fights on USA Cable, and you know, I wasn't bad. I was horrible. It was a disaster. I mean, I was nervous. I was the worst ever, and it was another 5 months until Rose Patterson, who worked for Frank Gelb, and they came up and I said, "Do you think you can do any better?" And I got a chance. And the first fight that I did was on CBS at that stage. It was in March 1993, and Marlon Starling, who was here, fought a guy by the name of Juan the Red Barrett, and he knocked him out. And it's been pretty steady work since then. It was a pretty good deal. I started announcing all the Top Rank Boxing on the ESPN shows, and that was the #1 sports cable show at the time, and in the eastern part of the country, and that led to ABC, CBS, NBC, Showtime, and HBO, and I actually was the first ring announcer to say, "It's showtime." I didn't come up with the line, David actually came up with it. I used to say, "It's showtime," and then I said, "Let's get ready to rumble." I didn't want to lose that line. Little boxing trivia you can all take home with you. Now in a few years I found myself traveling all over the country announcing fights. When Mike Tyson became heavyweight champion in the late 80s, that was indeed a big break for me. And my career really took off. And somehow, like you say, Al, we did manage to survive the 80s. And people say, when are you going to write a book? When I retire so I can tell the truth. But no, I'll leave you about it. It'll cost you. And I found myself introducing starting lineups for Stanley Cup playoffs, NBA championship games, the World Series. It's just been a great ride. The phone never stopped ringing. I had to bring my brother Bruce Buffer on to help me out man the phones, because it's pretty hard to say, well, I want to get this much. And Bruce is a pretty good businessman, and he took over eventually. He became my business partner to help with the trademark. Now, a big question always is, how did the trademark happen? We all remember Muhammad Ali at the classic weigh-ins in Madison Square Garden, and I'm looking so pretty, and my waist down, I'm ready to rumble. Ready to rumble. It's crazy news. Sal Marciano on ESPN. We had a lot of fights in Atlantic City, and Sal would actually say, well, let's get ready to rumble from Resorts International, or we're ready to rumble from Atlantic City. That sounded good, and so, I started to say that, and Sal continued on with his new sports anchor job with television in New York, and wasn't with us anymore, and left me as the only one saying, let's get ready to rumble, and kind of fine-tuned it, and that's what you hear today. I tried man your battle stations, and crickets out there. Ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelt. I stayed with Let's Get Ready to Rumble. A great friend of mine who passed away, Jody Murray, an entertainer, told me around 1988 or 89. He said, when you say Let's Get Ready to Rumble, shut the hell up. And you know, this guy really knew show business and timing and everything. And his point was, if you see the old tapes on the ESPN Classic, I would say, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble 10 rounds of boxing in the heavyweight division. Because I didn't want to like really seem as though I was trying to make attention myself. But, you know, I wanted that hook, basically, to let everybody know it's time to meet the stars of the show. And the reason was, for many years, once TV came on the scene, the ring announcers were introducing all their buddies on the commission. And it got out of hand. WBC, the WPA, the chairman, the state commission, the executive director, 3 judges, 4 doctors. Now the fighters had just come into the ring with all this music, all this electricity, all this excitement, and we've just sucked the air out of the ring and killed it. So I wanted something that would be like, gentlemen, start your engines. Everybody knows what that means. The race is about to start. This meant you were going to meet the stars of the show. Let's have some energy back in the room and meet the guys that really deserve all the applause. And that's really what the reasoning was for that. Now another thing I'm always asked is, what's the best fight I ever saw? Real simple. February 1989, Roberto Duran, Iran Barkley. Unbelievable. Duran, once again, having to make another one of his comebacks, this time at middleweight. Iran Barkley had just captured, the middleweight title from my great Hall of Fame classmate here, Tommy Hearns. And it was a blizzard. You remember this fight? 19 inches of snow. Atlantic City's an island. We don't even know how the people got there. They were hanging from the ceilings. Pardon me, a total sellout. Duran gets a knockdown combination, knockdown in the 10th or 11th year history, now somewhere in there. A 2-point swing and wins a split decision to become middleweight champion of the world. Just the best fight I ever saw, and I've seen a lot of great fights, and that's right up there. The most exciting moment I recall, and I know Michael Moore is behind me, but I'm sorry. He was beating the hell out of George Foreman for 10 straight rounds. The fight was over, people were starting to leave, and then the noise after and then the noise was unbelievable. And as a moment, because of George being about 132 years old at the time, the geezer was heavyweight champion of the world again. Just a great moment. And you know, and for me, there's that the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. You know, I've known Michael Moore since he was 19 years old. He was like something like 29-0 with 29 knockouts as a light heavyweight champion. Moved up, became heavyweight champion of the world. You know, I knew his family. That my heart's broken, and then you're just as excited for the other guy. That, you know, that's kind of what makes boxing great. Is, you know, you love a guy in one corner, and you find out you love the other guy too. And you just want to see a really good fight. But that was a great moment. I'm always asked, where are the best fans? It's a 3-way tie for me. And the best fans, I think, are in Germany, the UK, and Bismarck, North Dakota. I'll tell you why for each. Fellow Hall of Famer, Wilfred Sauerland, started to bring big fights to Germany. And for many years, when you do the introduction in Germany, they would just sit there and wait and applaud. He had Henry Mosquez, light heavyweight champion. I started to do the introductions. The crowds became huge. They were filling up arenas. And they became knowledgeable, loyal, and they just, to this day, it's too bad you don't get to see them all, but, you know, 45 and 50,000 fans that pack a stadium to see the Klitschko's fight. Leo Houck, who most Americans aren't familiar with, packs them in. They just have a great deal of knowledge, and they are major fans. UK fans, for 100 years, they've been insane, and we all know that. But they are loyal. When we have fights in the States, whether it's Ricky Hatton or Joe Calzaghe, It's almost all British fans here. When I would do a fight in Manchester, and there was a guy 4 fights down on the undercard, he was from Yorkshire. 2,000 fans from Yorkshire would show up. Great loyalty, great feeling in the ring. The noise is fantastic. In Bismarck, North Dakota, the reason I mention them as great fans, just the 3 times we did fights there, I have never heard anything like this in my life. Virgil Hill captured the silver medal, and only became light heavyweight champion. Top ranked promoter, and we went in there with ABC Wide World of Sports, and he defended his title. And I think there was only 8,000 fans in the arena, but it was so loud and so emotional that my ears just burned, and I never forgot that feeling. And it was just great. So right behind him, of course, I think San Juan and Manila is pretty close for noisy fans. But Bismarck, North Dakota, I loved it. So how many championship fights have I done? Another question I always get. I have no idea. Because when I started doing this, it was just fun. I lived in Philadelphia. I had to just drive to Atlantic City, 60 miles away. I never dreamed I would be doing this for a living. So I really wish I had kept track of that. And I'm always asked who's your favorite fighter. Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson. I don't even have to say it. That pretty much says it. Now, as I start to wrap this up, there's one person I want to recognize as probably the most important individual in my success. And without a few months' experience in the ring, Bob Arum put me in front of a sold-out Madison Square Garden in June 1983. Now, remember, I was terrible in October 1982, stunk the joint out. Somehow got a chance again 5 months later. So now it's only 3 months that I had experience I really have as a ring announcer. And I convinced Bob to let me be the ring announcer for Roberto Duran, once again coming back from the dead, to challenge for the junior middleweight title against Davey Moore. Madison Square Garden was sold out. It was electric, it was exciting, and I can honestly say it was like a turning point in my career for me mentally. I don't think I was ever really nervous again after that. There was just something about it that was unreal. Again, Roberto Duran captured the title, a TKO. Actually, Jay Edson stopped the fight. The referee was so bad. The late great Jay Edson stepped up onto the ring apron and said, "You got to stop the fight." And a great night. And Bob, for that, and then sticking with me for almost 30 years now, including last night, you've done a lot for me. I really appreciate it. I love you, Bob. I wish you were here right now. Now, in boxing, I've been lucky to meet heads of state, monarchs, movie stars, sports superstars, but a lot of the people I think about today are those who aren't with us. The late, great Teddy Brenner, all-time great matchmaker, who sat down with me in the room the night of that Duran-Davey Moore fight and gave me a list of fighters to introduce as celebrity intros, including Muhammad Ali and Willie Mays was there. It just helped lift the roof off the garden. Something like that you don't forget. Irving Rudd, the publicist, the late Dan Duva, who after refusing to use me, eventually did start using me for his big fights. Dennis Dolchin, a good friend of mine, just left us at too young an age. And a gentleman that I was hoping was going to be here for a friend to us all, Bert Randolph Schlitter, who passed away a few months ago. Two of my best friends, Arthur Curry and Dr. Frank Ryan. They're not here. I wish they were. My mother and dad would have been 100 this year. My mother left quite a while ago. My dad almost made it, 96 years old. And but I thought my beautiful wife Christine here and thanks to her, she keeps me focused, happy, healthy, and also thanks for keeping me young and helping make me love life more than ever. And I really appreciate it. Love you. The International Boxing Hall of Fame is a magnificent shrine to all of boxing's greats. So many legends and heroes that we always remember, but I hope we keep sight of those who will never get here. You know, there's always a trainer that never captured lightning in a bottle with the gifted kid that could take him to the top, or the small town promoter that gave fans the excitement of competitive fights, but just stayed in the Midwest or wherever, and you know, did a great job like all of us. And then there's all the great fighters out there who never got the big break. You know, there might have been another Mark Johnson or a Thomas Hearns, but maybe an injury, a torn ACL that never got surgically repaired, or just mismanagement early in his career, and so he was never taken seriously. And kind of like the unknown soldier, I hope that maybe someday here at the Hall of Fame we can have a little spot for all those guys that are out there, that bring us to the arena, that are they're not the second name that gets introduced. They're like the winner does. But they've toiled, they've worked hard, and they deserve recognition, just like all of us who are really lucky enough to be here. You know, when we talk about those guys, we like to use humor about the fighters that we kind of think, well, they weren't that good. Like, have you heard about Kid Candle? One blow and he's out. Or, a fighter that had to retire because he had bad hands because the ref kept stepping on them all the time. And, you know, we love to have humor with that, but just keep in mind there's guys out there that work really hard, and let's always remember them. I'd like to, in closing, I would like to dedicate most of this to some of the names that I mentioned that really helped me with my career. But a portion of that dedication I'd like to dedicate to a guy in New York by the name of Giovanni Adenizio. And he's better known as Johnny Addy. And I think everybody my age that ever watched the Friday night fights, while they loved listening to Don Luntley, there was something really great about hearing Johnny Addy say the words, "Championship of the World." It's legendary, and it's we gotta have Johnny Addy's family here when he gets his honor someday. Now, thank you, Ed Brophy, for your wonderful staff and the great volunteers here at the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I want to thank all the people in Conestoga, New York, for making this the ideal home for this great event every year. You know, thank you to all the fans all year long that go to the fights, that watch the pay-per-view shows and spend their money. Last night still did. But you know what? It was a good fight. We're going to overcome it. It's a great sport. And so let me just say this. For the thousands in attendance and the millions around the world who wish they could be here, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
He was born in Dedham, Massachusetts. Following an extensive amateur boxing career, he turned pro in 1978. Under the tutelage of Hall of Fame trainer Eddie Futch, he became a popular attraction on ESPN. He retired in 1986 with a reputation as a crowd-pleasing warrior. After hanging up his gloves, he worked as a salesman before becoming Futch's apprentice in Las Vegas. He now operates his current gym, the Wild Card Boxing Club. Respected the world over for his calm demeanor in the corner and deep insight into the sport. He has guided over 20 world champions, including James Toney, Marlon Sarlin, Johnny Tapia, Michael Moore, Oscar De La Hoya, Mike Tyson, and Bernard Hopkins. He currently trains Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., Amal Khan, and Manny Pacquiao. 2012 Hall of Fame inductee in the non-participant category, Freddie Roach.
I'd like to thank my family for coming today. Big surprise, thank you. Especially my mother, Barbara, I love you, thank you for coming on. I'd like to thank my girlfriend, Maya, the prettiest doctor I know. Marie, I'd like to thank you, my best assistant. By the way, what time do we train Chavez tomorrow? So, and I have my friend Steve here, I don't know what you do. But really, I'd like to thank all my fighters that I've ever worked with for getting me to this point. This is a great honor, the best day of my life. And the big thanks goes to my mentor, my idol, Mr. Eddie Fudge. Thank you for teaching me this game and teaching me how to do my job like you did, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
After a decorated amateur career, he turned pro in 1990. After 14 straight wins, he defeated Francisco Tejedor for the vacant IBF flyweight title to become the first African-American flyweight champion in history. He became a two-division champion by winning the IBF super flyweight belt in 1999. After two unsuccessful attempts to capture the bantamweight title, he dethroned Fernando Montiel to win the WBO super flyweight title. With a dazzling hand speed, punching power, and technique, the Southpaw was considered one of boxing's top pound-for-pound elite during his championship reigns. 2012 Hall of Fame inductee in the modern category, Marshal.
First of all, I'd like to give honor to Savior, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I'm just excited this weekend to be around all these guys who paved the way for me. I think I may be the youngest person that was to go in the Hall of Fame at 40 years old. First of all, I really like to thank my mom right here who made it happen. This young lady. This lady right here made sure I ran. This lady right here made sure I ate right. And then once again, the first African American in history to win the flyweight and super flyweight world title in the history of boxing. When I got here, everybody was going to say, you know, hey, 2 shots, let's go. But everybody up there was saying, where's your dad? Where's your dad? So my father who trained me, right here, stand up, Mr. Johnson, who trained me since I was 5 years old. My way. Me and my dad negotiated all our contracts. I didn't get involved with a lot of the trainers who said they can do this, they can do that. The only thing that we had to do was we had to tell them when they was making the contracts that none of the words can be over 5 letters, so we can get it, get straight to the point. Most importantly, right now, who's dealing with this knucklehead is my wife, Malika. She's dealing with this knucklehead every day, and dealing with me is a tough thing. And my daughter, Ty, I love you all. All weekend I was talking to Al Bernstein and Todd, but since I have Showtime here, I'm politicking to work with Al Bernstein and Antonio Todd for the color commentary. So I've been telling them all week, but since I have you guys here, we will be taking cards at the end of the show. But most importantly, this is a very big honor to receive this. To be up here on this stage, the smallest fighter from Washington, D.C. as a professional, the first fighter born and raised in Washington, D.C. right now. Born and raised in Washington, D.C. to go to the Hall of Fame. You know, but I just idolize these guys up here. I'm so choked up. I don't really know what to say. But most importantly, I'd like to thank the writers who voted me in, number one. Number two, I'd like to thank the fans, the volunteers who've been helping us around here. It's been a lovely, lovely weekend, all the volunteers. Ed Brophy, thank you. I will not miss another Hall of Fame ever again. I'm just sitting, I mean, where can you get fighters of this magnitude on one stage without somebody hitting somebody? It just can't happen. You know, it just can't happen. Like Mr. Buffer said, you know, he's in the ring with all those great champions and none of them can hit him. Because, you know, he was in and out. That's what I was. I was too sharp. I was in and out. All weekend, Tommy Hearns been too sharp. Look at his suit now. He's sharp. He's sharp. Freddie Roach had a long flight from Las Vegas. Look, he too sharp. See, so you know, Al Bernstein, all these gentlemen up here are too sharp, but most importantly, I made it.
Born in Memphis, Tennessee, as a child he moved to Detroit to begin boxing at the age of 10 at the King Solomon Gym. After his coach left, he moved to the Emmanuel Stewart's Crack Gym. Named 1977's most outstanding national amateur boxer, he then turned pro and racked up 17 straight KO victories. He defeated Hall of Famer Pepino Cuevas for the WBA welterweight title in 1980. In 1987, he became the first man to win titles in 4 divisions by halting Juan Rodon to capture the WBC middleweight title. One of boxing's most exciting champions, 2012 Hall of Fame inductee, the Motor City Cobra, Thomas Hitman.
Man, it finally happened. You know, I'll be back thinking. You know, for a person to not dream of being a Hall of Famer and it happening to you, it just really chills to my body because it's nothing I never trained for. I never expected. I just trained to be the best. I trained to give my best every time I go out to the ring to fight. And hope that the fans accept me. And I must say, look at all you beautiful people out there. The same thing I do when I go to a fight. And I step into the arena. And I check out the crowd. And then I go back to the dressing room. And that's when I started to pray. Because I pray that I be able to go out and give you guys what you pay to see every day. Each and every time I fight. And now, to see all you people here tonight, today, brother, to witness Thomas Hearns and everybody else making it. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. First of all, I thank God for making this possible, but I thank my wonderful, beautiful family for being here with me to see this all happening to me. You know, again, I'm ecstatic about this. I'm so excited. And I got to thank my counterpart right now, Mama Harry, and all the rest of these brothers up here. Great. It couldn't have happened, man, if we didn't get together. You know, I think that together we made a lot of folks happy, and we made a lot of folks sad too. I'm not gonna talk about the folks in my. I really want to talk about myself, but that's okay. Anyway, I thank you for being here to witness this, and may God bless everybody. Thank you very much.
Because he came in late. Right here, Canastona's own world champion, Carmen Basilio. Now folks, what we're going to do here, we're going to, every year we have a tradition. We get all of our